Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome back to another photography review show. I hope you had a great week, and I hope you're ready for more photography fun. Anyway, if you with me here live on this stream, please go ahead and write in the comments where you're watching from, and also just to double check if you can let me know that you can hear me and see me, so everything is right. Anyway, folks, let's start right away from the beginning. My name is Jacob, and I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex, England. I've been doing the photography review show for almost 2 years now, and I have reviewed thousands of your images. So, what do we do during the photography review show? Well, it's very simple. We take your images and then we look at three aspects of the photography. We look at the technical part. This is where we look at things like camera settings, we look at your exposure, noise, sharpness, and so on, and try to give you some tips and tricks on how you can improve that part of your photography. After that, we look at the artistic part of your photography. This is where we talk about things like composition, storytelling, the main subject, and everything to do with that. Finally, if we have extra time and if I think that is beneficial, then we jump into the editing processor or editing software. And I try to give you some tips and tricks on what I would do differently and what you can try moving forward. So, three parts. This is what we're going to do today. Moving on, if you want to join us, if you would like to join us for the photography review show, the easiest way to do that is to join our membership. Which is called Clever Photographer Plus. And to find out more about it, you can go directly to our website, cleverphotographer.com/forward membership. There, you're going to find more about the membership and what it actually is. You pay a little monthly fee. And first of all, you get access to this photography review show. You can send your photos. Then you can also get monthly photography bundle full of great tools, including overlays, presets, textures, backgrounds, custom brushes, and so much more. Each of these bundles usually include around 200 to 300 elements, so it's definitely worth it. And on top of that, we also have our secret group, Facebook group, which is called Clever Photographer Academy, and you'll be able to join that too. So this is all out of the way. Let's quickly jump into the comments and see who is with us. Zdeněk, good evening. Greetings to South Africa. I hope you had a great week. And I already saw your images. I can't wait to look at them again and talk about them even more. Ivanka, good evening to you as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, I was looking at your images and I can't wait to talk about them further. Let's have a look. We also have a Tony. Tony, greetings to you. Thank you again for coming. It's always great to see you over. Folks, this is just the beginning. We went through all the notes and everything we had to. So now let's turn our attention towards the photos. So what do we have this week? We have a mix of landscape photography, also some wildlife photography, and again, some macro and kind of moody photography. So let's open all of this. And let's start right from the top with Elizabeth's photos and more importantly, with landscape photographers. So starting with Elizabeth, let's have a look. We have three images. So let's look at them and start from there. So first come first, let me make the screen a little bit bigger so you can see the images. Just 1 second, right here. And now since you can see what I'm doing, let's start by looking at this picture right here. Now, it's a lovely photo with a mix of different elements. Just kind of quickly looking at it, there is a little bit of glow around the foreground, but I'm sure we'll touch up on that a little bit later on. After that, what else we have here? We have this quite nice landscape capture with really dramatic sky. That's really pretty as well, with lots of contrast and lots of interesting elements there. And finally, I think it's the same image, just probably adjusted and turned into black and white. Now, Elizabeth, I wish I would know which one of them you want me to talk about. Well, we'll cover both of them, but first we start from here. So as I mentioned, the first part we're going to talk about is a technical part. So this is where we're going to look at the camera details. Starting with this first image, this was captured with Canon RP with the Tamron lens. 28 to 300 millimeters is the lens that was used for this image. And from the camera settings, ISO 100, 300 millimeters, f10, and 1/320th of a second. So from the camera settings, ISO 100 is spot on. Again, when it comes to landscape photography, really the goal is to keep the ISO as low as possible to make sure that we don't introduce additional noise to our images. Then f10 is perfectly fine. I'm a big fan of using or getting the best out of our lenses. So I usually stay within f7.1 to f11, unless of course I'm creating special effect or there is a specific lighting. But f7.1 to f11 is generally where you get the most out of your lens. So with f10, great choice there, no problem with that. And with the shutter speed 1/320th of a second, it's fine. I mean, looking at the image, it was probably bright day anyway, so there is no problem there. Now, that is all out of the way, and then we can focus on the artistic part. Let's have a look at it. I mean, the first thing that strikes me, obviously, is the glow around the rocks here. Now, there could be multiple different reasons for it. Maybe it's also simply just a cutout of one part placed over another image. In that case, the glow is really distracting. You actually have a mix of two different glows. You have this white glow, and then you have the darker glow created by chromatic aberration. In general, both of these elements happen when there is on an image a darker part or darker element against quite bright part. This is where these artifacts happen. Also, the chromatic aberration can happen based on the direction of the light coming to the lens, and also based on your lens. So those are probably two of the biggest mistakes, or two of the things that I think take away a little bit from the image. After that, when we zoom in and start to really look around, you can see even more glow around these bits. And again, you can see how the background doesn't necessarily match the foreground when it comes to color and also the light. So even though Elizabeth, I think it's a very interesting attempt of bringing things together or approaching it different way, I think that at the end, it's a little bit too visible for me. Now, what could you do differently? I think first come first, you would have to cut it out much tighter on the subject to really get rid of this glow. After that, adjust the foreground and background colors and brightness. And then again, work some magic to really blend it together. When you use multiple different elements, things like LUTs can really help, or general editing that can really just adjust and bring everything together. So this is for this image. Moving on the second image, so we have this huge or vast landscape with some trees, forest, mountains, and then a really dramatic sky. So starting from the technical part and the camera details, this was captured with probably the same camera actually, Canon RP with the Tamron 28 to 300 millimeters. And from the camera settings, again, we are on ISO 100, f13, and 1/640th of a second. So ISO 100, again, well done there. f13, not necessarily a problem. I mean, when you go higher, obviously, either you're trying to adjust the rest of the settings or you're looking for sharpness all the way through the scene, which in this case worked quite well. And 1/640th of a second gave you quite good result. There is not necessarily anything over or underexposed. So that is all good there. Now, zooming in, let's have a look at some of the sharpness. It's a little bit pixelated and actually quite noisy if I zoom in. So that is something which is probably coming out of the camera. Some camera, even though you're using lower ISO, when there is a high dynamic range and quite big contrast between the brighter and darker parts, then they create a noise, often in the darker parts of the image. That's why you can see it quite a lot here. So there is a fair bit of noise. And also, Elizabeth, there is a little bit of sensor dust, something that can be quite quickly fixed, but you just need to take care of that. So there is a little bit here, also a little bit in the corner, if you can see it. So definitely something to look at. Now, when we're talking about the composition, obviously this image is all about the drama in the sky. You can see the clouds, the sky, the contrast of the colors. And really the first thing that strike me is that it seems to be tilting a little bit on one side. So that's something that create a little bit of unbalance there. And then I wish there would be just a little bit more of the bottom part, a little bit more of the ground, because when I look at the image, obviously my thought immediately go to the sky, but then the bottom seems to be just a little bit cut out. So I wish that we would be able to get a little bit more of the bottom here. When it comes to the black and white image, let's just move there. Same version, but black and white. It's very nicely done, very contrasty, very dramatic, with really lots of contrast and clarity, making it a little bit overwhelming. I'm a big fan of dramatic black and white, but in this case, I think the contrast is just a little bit one step too far. So maybe less contrast, a little bit of glow or a little bit of smoothing, and the thing will look already much better. But we're going to return to this image and we're going to quickly touch up with that. So let's bring it into edit module. And first come first, let's take care of our sensor dust. Now here in Luminar Neo, you can actually just go into erase tool and click on remove dust spots. So you don't have to go one by one. You can just click on that. And basically the application scans the image and remove these dust spots for you. So you can see that just like that, all of them disappear. Let's have a look before and after. I don't know if you can see it, but there are some here. Now, if there are still some left, you can just very quickly click on them with a brush, click on erase, and they will be removed. So that's the first part. We have taken care of the technical part, which was the sensor dust. After this, we're going to tilt it and crop it a little bit. So let's go into the crop tool. And first, let's make it straight at the bottom, or a little bit more straight. So somewhere around here. And then let's have a look. If you are on 16 on 9, you are. So we're going to just make it a little bit smaller. So it's more balanced. We have a little bit more, or at least third of the land and 2/3 of the sky. So let's have a look at it somewhere around here. Once I'm happy, let's just hit enter and let's have a look at the result there. So I think that is already much better as well. So we have a straight landscape and we have a better proportion between the landscape and the sky. So I think that's also a step forward. And finally, I'm not 100% sure about the white balance for the green areas. So let's see if we can fix that. We can try adjusting the color. So we can try to remove the color cast, but that doesn't necessarily help. So let's have a look at the white balance itself. So here in Luminar Neo, you go to develop tool and color. So first, let's see if we would add a little bit more warmth, but I think that's a bit too much. So then let's have a look if we would add magenta and actually remove some of the green tint. Let's see. I usually like to overdo it and then return and see at what point we are good. I think somewhere around 20 maybe looks good. And then just a touch of warmth, somewhere around 1 or maybe even just 2, just to bring back a little bit of the warmth there. So I think that is a little bit better as well. Once that's done, to really finish it off, I would just use a simple Enhance AI tool, which when you use the Accent AI slider, what it does, it basically balances the scene all together. So that often works, and in this case, it does as well, just to kind of balance the contrast and the light across the image. So I think something like this. Of course, that you could apply vignette to it, you could play around with the colors and really adjust them. But I think that for the time being, this is quite good. Let's have a look before and after. Shame you can't see the twisting and aligning, but let's quickly run through what we've done. We have straightened the horizon. We have cropped the image to get better proportions between the landscape and the rest of the image and on the rest of the landscape or sky. And then we have also adjusted the white balance just a little bit to remove that heavy green tint and bring back a little bit of warmth. So Elizabeth, this is what I would do with it. Of course, that once you would finish this edit, you could definitely turn it into black and white and then really start to play around with it, add lots of contrast, or add lots of glow and see where that would take you. If you're gonna do that, then I would definitely do it in a combination with some local adjustments, almost in a style of somebody like Ansel Adams or so on. So there we are. These are pictures from Elizabeth. Thank you very much for sending them over. And it's time to move on and look at the pictures from Ivana. So we have two images, two beautiful landscapes right here. Now this is beautiful capture. I really, really like that. And then we have this picture right here too. Wow, what a misty shot. Okay, starting from here, let's have a look if it actually says what we are looking at. It doesn't, but that's not a problem. And let's start from the camera settings. So we are, those was captured with Sony 6000 with a Sigma 18 to 50 millimeters. Now, when it comes to camera settings, ISO 160, f5.6, and 1/320th of a second. So the ISO nice and low, so well done on that. f5.6 is perfectly fine. I'm quite curious to see how will look the sharpness towards the end of the image, but we'll check that in a moment. And then we have 1/320th of a second, which works really well on this image because, to be honest, capturing fog or mist isn't really that simple. Often, if you choose a wrong shutter speed, you end up by this really heavy, milky blob of something on an image. So it's not that easy to capture it, and actually it looks great here. So let's go ahead and have a look at the image. So first come first, we were talking about the sharpness, obviously, or focus. The grass is sharp, and when we zoom in, even the rest of the image is here as well. So that's great. I don't worry about this area too much. So that's looking great. The light is really lovely. The reflection is really nice as well. And noise-wise, it's looking good. Everything is good there for me. So all in all, I think it's looking great. Now, moving to the artistic part of the image, I really, really like it. There is lots of good things happening here. We have the foreground element here, which really opens the scene and give us sense of depth. So then it kind of opens up for the rest of the scene with this building and little tower with a bridge, creating very romantic and fantasy-like scene and view. The fog and the forest actually really help, especially when you had a weather like this, when you had a kind of moody sky, then the fog really helps to finish the scene and create lovely contrast between the main subject, what's in focus and colorful, compared to the rest of the image, which is kind of hidden and misty. So lovely, lovely shot here. I really, really like that. And I think composition-wise, it's well done too. Reflection works really well as well. The only thing, when I look at it, it seems that it's a little bit tilting towards one side. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. And that's about it. Otherwise, great. So Ivana, well done. This is a great, great picture. Now, if we quickly jump into the edit module, let's have a look if we can just straighten it up a little bit. Now, the straightening is something that I used to photograph for hotels and restaurants and bars, and it's just something that kind of stuck with me. Maybe some people are not that worried about it, but for me, I think the image should be straight. So it's something that definitely is quite good to look at. Now, this is just an automatic straightening. You can, of course, adjust it depend on what application do you have. And once you do that, you will see that everything will be nicely straight and it will look great. The rest of it is fantastic. I have nothing to add to this image, so well done. And let's go back and look at the second image. Now, let's open that and let's talk about this. Let's first start by the camera settings. Again, same camera, and I assume same lens. Still Sony 6000, 18 to 50 millimeters on the lens, and camera settings, ISO 640, f11 and 1/60th of a second. Now, let's have a look at it. With ISO 640, how much noise did it give you? It did a little bit. You can see it, especially in the fog. That's another thing with the fog and mist. the noise usually really comes out there. And if you're not careful, if you overdo it in a combination with ISO, you even get the colorful noise, and then it's really tricky. But it adds a little bit to the scene. Again, it's a moody capture. Some people actually add grain later in the post processing. So in some way, you have it there already. So it's not really a big deal. I think this picture is a lot about the image itself, not necessarily about the technical part, because it's just a very moody and lovely shot. So camera settings good. Obviously, ISO, if you could have brought it a little lower, I think it would have helped. But then I assume that maybe it was a little bit darker, and that can get a bit tricky. Now, talking about the composition, I am a big fan of frame-in-frame composition, when you basically use the elements around you to create frame and opening on the subject. However, this one isn't 100% balanced, because the bridge is a little bit hidden behind, and there is a lot of obstruction there. So even though I love the moody feel and the edit, and I think that with the glow above it creates nice picture, it's just, it doesn't necessarily 100% work for me. So that's my only thing there, just because there is a lot of obstructions here. And when you talk about obstructions, it's not necessarily balanced, because on this side you have a lots of tree, and on this side you have nothing. So I know that sometimes we can't choose, that's nature, but I would have hoped or wished that you could have gone a little bit more around and get more of the bridge in that view, not to have it as obstructed. Also, as an advice, when it comes to foreground elements like trees, grass, and actually anything else, when it has a high frequency, and the prime example of high frequency is a grass, when there is lots of little pieces, in this case, there is lots of little leaves. When there are too many of them, it will bring all the attention towards it. So basically, high frequency foreground will take away lots of attention from your main subject. It's not necessarily a case here, but you're heading there. And similarly with the first image, where it actually works, I think it creates a really nice element. It's something to look at and keep in mind. Other than that, I think the editing is lovely. It's very natural. It's very basic, so it looks good. There is no push for anything, and I think the result is really, really good. Ivana, lovely pictures. I especially love the first one, and I really hope that you will send us more pictures in the future, so we can look at them again and talk even more about photography. So that's that. And now let's move on and jump onto pictures from Tony. Tony, opening right here. Wait, next week is Halloween on 30th. I'm not sure if we're going to do the show next week. I'll need to think about it. But anyway, coming back to your pictures, that's a great opening for the Halloween, upcoming Halloween. And what do we have? So we have a little bit more autumn feeling here. We have some mushrooms right here, and then we have this tomatoes with I wonder what it is, like a skeleton of crow or something like that. Okay, Tony, let's talk about it. Obviously, it's not your usual when we talk about flowers, because you're already great at it, but I think it makes sense to send something a little bit different so you can also keep moving forward. So starting with this one, let's talk about this image. This was captured with Canon 50D, then 28 to 105 millimeters. And from the camera settings, we are on ISO 160, f6.3, and 1/100 of a second. So the camera setting is perfectly fine. I don't worry about that. There's nothing wrong with any of that. Now, when we look at the image itself, I really like the light. It's nicely diffused with a little bit of attention towards the center. So I think that works really well too. The level of details is lovely all across the surface, as well some of the grass. So that's nicely done too. Moving to the artistic part, I think for me personally, the image is cropped a little bit too tight, especially because when you crop it like this for flowers, it's not necessarily a big deal because they have a space around them. Where on this image, you have other elements that's stepping in, and they really look like they were cropped away. So just a little bit of extra on each side would really help, maybe like an inch, to get more like a more free feeling, more balanced feeling. I think sometimes when it's really cropped like this, it's a little bit intense and it can be overwhelming. But what you could do if you would really want to crop, to have a tight crop, then you could recrop it and really go tight. So for example, you could go ahead and do something like this. Let's say like this, with probably similar amount of grass on these parts. And then everybody would know that that was intentional, that you wanted to crop away these parts and bring more attention towards your subject. So you could do something like this, maybe add more focus to the texture. You could increase the details, for example, or the sharpness to really have this part stand out. And then you could even add another vignette to this part and really close it from the other side and do something like this. So that would be an idea on what you could do it if you would want really tight crop. So that's for this image right here. Now for this image, let's talk about again the camera details. This was Canon 50D, 28 to 105 millimeters, and from the camera settings, ISO 320, f9, and 1/200 of a second. So again, lovely capture. When I look at the image, I look at it earlier. It just seemed tiny soft. Like it's like little. It's just not as crisp as your usual images, but it still works. The light is nice, although it's a little bit bright, but still nicely diffused and all put nicely together. When we talk about composition, I think it's a similar idea. Again, I think you are just a little bit too tight to all of them. And actually, in this case, the contrast isn't that strong of the main subject because there is lots of other brown and yellow elements around. So that's just something to think about for the future. Otherwise, I really like it. I think it looks great. I think it's a lovely capture, which really makes you think of autumn. And I think it's just nicely done. Again, you could completely recrop it and make it very cinematic with like 16:9 and then bring it up like this. And that could also work really nicely. You balance the side of the crop and then end up with something like this. That would be another idea for the future. So, Tony, lovely captures of the mushrooms. Thank you very much for sending them over. I wonder if those images are from this year or if you have captured them sometimes before, but either way, they are very lovely. And thank you very much for sending this picture right here. It anyway made me think of the Halloween and upcoming show. So before we go to continue, let's quickly jump into some of the comments. Please, if it's possible for you, take a class on how to cut out images from background properly without having issues. I will definitely look at that and see if that's something we can do with all the new updates for Luminar Neo. Now, actually, it's much easier, and I am about to release a new course, which I hope to be ready on Thursday, and that may be something that could interest you there. Ivana, with her comment, thank you for great feedback. Appreciate it. You got great points. Thank you very much, Ivana. I really appreciate the fact that you don't mind me looking at your images, that you enjoy the feedback. And again, I hope to see more images from you soon. So it's time to move to the second part of the show. What time we have? 6:32. That's great timing. So let's jump to Ken. Ken, who's usually supplying us with wildlife photos. Now we have a little difference. I feel like people are really ready for Halloween now because that's the second image we get with a similar theme. We have this skeleton right here. And then we have some birds flying and they look more like a ducks. And then we have this landscape right here. Let's have a look at the name if we can find out what we're looking at. It's called George Trail. Okay, so we have this right here, and then we have the birds. I will not necessarily review the skeleton, but the birds. Now, Ken, the birds themselves, it's a lovely picture. You can see the colors, but unfortunately, the sharpness isn't really great there. They are very soft, and I don't know if it's shot from real far and then zoom in, or if the camera just struggled to capture the picture. However, you can see that the main subject, which are the birds, are really soft here. Also, there is quite heavy problem with the noise on it. So again, something that you maybe need to look at. From the camera settings, it was captured with Nikon Coolpix, ISO 100, f4.5, and 1/400th of a second. So it's not necessarily the camera settings, which is perfectly fine. It's more probably the camera who struggled to focus this far. So maybe something to work on. It's a lovely idea. Obviously, the birds flying is very to the topic of the autumn, but I think the sharpness and noise is something that we need to look at. Now, in overall, it's a lovely picture, but I think maybe the blue is just a little bit too strong for me. So to adjust this is actually really simple. You just jump in something like HSL panel here in the color tool, and then you adjust the saturation of the blue to bring it down just a little bit to make it a little bit more natural. So somewhere around here. So that's for this image right here. And then for this image, I mean, I would love this image if there would be no people. So even though it's really nice, it's a lovely landscape capture, it's just really shame because the people take lots of attention away and it just gets very distracting. Anyway, still looking at the camera settings, ISO 250, f2.8, and then 1/30th of a second. The 1/30th of a second gives you quite nice smooth water, although I would go probably even slower. But still, it's the people who are a little bit distracting. Looking at the image, the leading line is quite nice. However, I think it's again all a little bit falling on one side. So let's jump into the edit module and see if we can fix that. So let's see if we can just make it a little bit more straight. Somewhere around here. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. And then as I like some of the other pictures, I would crop it to 16 or 9 and really get very cinematic look, which is almost like from a movie. And that often gives us a really cool punch on the main subject, which in this case is the waterfall. After that, I would definitely add a vignette. Again, just adjust the sides and add more focus on the waterfall itself. So again, this is what I would do with these images. Thank you very much for sending them over. It was my pleasure to review them for you. And if you have more, make sure you send them for the next episode. And finally, it's time to go to South Africa and visit Zdeněk, who is with us tonight as well. Let's have a look at his picture. So we have this capture from outside with a lovely path and some trees. So we talk about that in a moment. And then we have a turtle and impala. If I hope I'm right. I hope that's the name of the animal. Anyway, let's start with the first picture. Let's just 1 second. Starting with this picture right here, this was captured with, and it doesn't say the name of the camera, but looking at it, it looks like the lens was Canon 24 to 105 millimeters. And from the camera settings, ISO 200, f10, and 1/200th of a second. So from the camera settings, pretty spot on. Nice and low ISO, f10 giving us sharpness all the way through, and 1/200th of a second, just to avoid like a movement in the trees and make sure that everything is nice and sharp. So that is all good there. Now, Zdeněk, let's have a look at it. Looking at it, I really like the gate. However, I'm just the framing, there's something strange around it. I don't know. It's like, it's almost like it's maybe square, but I don't think it's square. So let's jump into edit module and have a look at it first. First come first. Let's see, is it square? It's almost square, but what I would actually use on this one, I would go for the 4:5 and I would turn it around. So that way we're really gonna focus just in a center. So I would say somewhere around here. After that, just enter and let's see if that will help. Yes, so that will create the gate and create frame in frame. After that, I would, in general, bring down the brightness because everything is bright, so it's a little bit overwhelming. So let's say to minus 0.5. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna actually use vignette with the center inside, where then we're gonna use the advanced setting and add inner light there. So by doing that, we are guiding the viewer's eyes all the way through the tunnel or the gate and inside of the image. Now, the final bit, what I would do, I would create a gradient at the bottom to even more increase the attention of the viewer. So what I would do, just minus exposure, masking, linear gradient, and drag it from the bottom up. So something like this. Okay, let's have a look at it. I think that's a little bit better. Finally, some of the green are not necessarily that natural. I think they are a little bit like a pastel green. So let's see if we can maybe adjust a little bit the white balance. Let's see if we just push a little bit of the tint. Is that gonna help? No, that doesn't help. So then let's have a look at the temperature. If we add a little bit of warmth, the green will be not great. So let's have a look at it. Because I am on the gradient. So let's open it again. Now, if we add a little bit of magenta, I think that helps a little bit. With the temperature, we can make it cooler or warmer. I would definitely go for the warmer option, which will bring some of the green back. After that, what we can do, we can, for example, try to apply LUT to it and see if that would help to adjust the colors. So let's have a look at some of the LUTs that come with the app. Now, the Long Beach looks quite cool. Los Angeles, Palm Spring, I don't mind as well. Riverside, not so much. Then Creative sometimes works as well. Let's have a look. Maybe the Kodak, Manhattan, no, not so much. So let's have a look. Smoky, maybe the Smoky gives us a nice green. So let's have a look at it. Let's have a look at the before and after. So by applying the LUT, it removes the blue shade from the back and it just pick up a little bit of the orange and green. So that's about it. I know you already applied some glow to it, but we can always increase that. And just like that, we have just a different image. So this is where we started and this is where we ended, bringing lots of attention for the opening, for the gate, and for the path behind. So I hope you like this one. And before we finish, let's look at the second image as well, which is really lovely. So I hope it's Impala. I hope I was right there. But anyway, let's look at it. So the sharpness itself, you get a little bit of like watercolor artifacts there. So I don't know if you have done some post-processing, maybe extra sharpening or noise reduction, but it's tiny bit visible there. In overall, if we talking about the camera settings, it was captured with ISO 800. So this is maybe why the artifacts. From the camera settings, furthermore, f5.6, 1/640th of a second. The sharpness is really good. I don't see a problem there. F5.6 also give you sharpness and focus all the way through. Quite like the reflection as well. I think that is nice too, but it's just I think maybe it is the noise reduction, which really gives you this like a pixelated touch. But never mind. Moving on, I quite like the light because we have an even light on the animal. Although we have a little bit of brightness at the back, I don't find this distracting. When it comes to composition, again, it's kind of interesting crop. It's this kind of half, it's kind of almost like square with, we have a little bit of the reflection, and then we obviously have more space in front of the animal, which I think works quite well. But again, I would maybe crop it just a little bit differently. Let's see if we maybe get a reduce of more of the reflection and make it just a little bit more cinematic if it's going to help. Maybe that's one way to do it. And then after that, I think we really need to add more attention towards the main subject, which of course can be done using a vignette. Now, let's not overdo it. The inner light there, so more light on the animal itself. Now, to fix a little bit of the colors, I would add a little bit of structure, and then I would also add a little bit of contrast. Let's have a look at that. So by doing that, we now have the animal stand out a little bit more. And finally, I would close the image a little bit from the top, well, quite a lot, with a linear gradient, so something like this. And by doing that, we will again add more attention towards the animal. And actually, if you would want to do that, you could also apply a little bit of softness towards the back. For example, with the use of blur tool and the tilt shift. Let's have a look at it. if we can maybe rotate it around and place it somewhere around here. Bringing this down a little bit. Now, obviously, we want the animal to be in focus. So somewhere around here, make it much bigger. But by doing that, we will add a little bit more depth to the overall photo. Let's still bring it down a little bit. And that's about it. So from here to just get a little bit more attention, more depth, and more intricate touches. So Zdeněk, great. Thank you very much for sending your photos over. I love the wildlife as well as the view. I'm a big fan of these leading lines and frame in frames. So very good there. Now, if you would want to really push the image, you would have somebody walking there. That would really add the overall depth, like a great touch. Ken, thank you for sending your pictures over. Tony, love to see the mushrooms. Ivana, beautiful captures. And Elizabeth, thank you for trying different things. And thank you for sending your beautiful landscape over as well. Folks, thank you for joining me tonight. It's 6:45, so we have gone through all the images. I hope you all going to have a great week. And don't forget that I'll be back next week or the week after. I need to see the schedule. But in the meantime, the dates are already up. The links are available in the membership as well as in the group. So go ahead, upload your photos. Even if we don't do the edition next week, I will keep them for the week after and will definitely review your images. Have a lovely evening or whatever time it is in your place. Stay safe, take care, and I will speak to you all soon.